Good morning, Wabash. Good morning. Today, speaking in Pioneer Chapel is Dean Scott Feller. Giving his talk titled, A Late Thanksgiving, please welcome Dean Scott Feller.
Good morning, Wabash. All right, so everybody's going to learn one thing today. It's Willamette, damn it. Yeah, that one was too easy. Let me begin by giving thanks by thanking the Sphinx Club. I'm not sure I really want to thank them for inviting me. I really don't like to give this type of public talk. I've avoided their request for the past several years, using the excuse that I speak at the senior breakfast and nobody should have to hear my thoughts twice in 1 year. But they were persistent. They caught me in a weak moment. More on that in a minute, and I agreed. But I definitely want to thank the Sphinx Club for organizing the Chapel Talk series. I've been at the college long enough to remember a time when this tradition was dormant. And I have to admit, being a doubter when the club reinvigorated the Chapel Talk. I assumed it would die again when those students leading the revival effort graduated. I was wrong. It has only gotten stronger each year, and I'm extremely grateful for the work that goes into sustaining it. So why did I accept the invitation to speak today? It's largely about timing. Levi wrote to me after I just concluded a 10-day period when I traveled to 2 meetings with fellow deans of private colleges. I'd spent several days at the Council of Independent Colleges, a group of about 500 private colleges around the country, and then shortly thereafter I traveled to Antioch College to spend 2 days with my counterparts at GLCA schools. Now, you might imagine that a meeting of deans is a high-level intellectual affair with riveting discussions of student learning outcomes and the power of the liberal arts. But you would be wrong. It is one long gripe session, interrupted only by coffee breaks where one continues the griping in a one-on-one format or calls home to your campus to learn what the crisis of the day is. Now, 2 of these meetings in 10 days actually made me realize that I have a lot to be thankful for. And I want to share some of those things with you today. Now, let me first admit to exaggerating a bit about the Dean's meeting. There was a lot of time spent on serious issues that are a threat to the liberal arts and liberal arts colleges. In the short term, we're dealing with potential tax law changes that would cost this college hundreds of thousands of dollars in endowment tax, that would reduce benefits to faculty and staff at Wabash, that would affect the deductibility of student loan interest upon your graduation from Wabash. And for those of you considering graduate school, it may make it financially impossible for you to pursue an advanced degree. We're also facing serious long-term financial challenges resulting from a decades-long hollowing out of the middle class as wealth has become increasingly concentrated in the top tiers of the income distribution. Now, I've spoken on this topic to the graduating seniors, to the Kiwanis Club, other local groups, and I won't belabor the point here, but private colleges like Wabash will not be able to survive in a world where only a few % of families can afford to contribute to the cost of education. And I know that there's a perception that the rising cost of tuition is to blame, but the truth is, it's the loss of earnings experienced by all but the richest households that is the real problem. I'm going to share one piece of data to make my point. When I was a college student, about 30 years ago, I worked hard for a lot of hours, but I worked on a farm during the summer, and I only earned a couple of bucks above minimum wage. But during that time, I actually went back and looked at my W-2s. I made about $5,500 each of those summers. Yesterday, I went on the internet and asked the question, what's $5,500 from when I was a college student worth today? It's over $12,000 Okay, so think about that for a minute. Just working a kind of typical manual labor job, if that earning power was here today, all of the students would have been able to earn $12,000 or more last summer. Would you have had an easier time paying for college if you'd earned $12,000 last summer? My family and I were able to pay for a private liberal arts education not because the tuition was lower, but because we could earn more of the tuition. Now, I think we can disagree on what the policy changes are to make this happen. My feeling is the answer to the affordability crisis is not free tuition. I think that's just putting a Band-Aid on the real problem. I think the answer is strengthening wages for the 99%. Now, I can get pretty fired up on this topic. Some of you have engaged me on it before, but the topic for today is not the challenges we face. The topic for today is my view on the strengths we have at Wabash to face those challenges, all right? So I'm going to be more positive from here on out, but I also want us to remember that one of the reasons for us to enumerate our strengths is to realize that we face real challenges. So this opportunity to give thanks is part of a larger project I'm engaged in to be both a better person and a better dean. The former, driven by a couple of big transitions I experienced this year. I turned 50 years old in the spring. A couple months later, I became a grandfather with the arrival of my grandson, Gus. It's great. These milestones are opportunities for reflections. And one of my realizations is I don't often enough express my appreciation to others. Now, this is my 4th year of trying to be a better dean. And I realize many people in the room are wondering when there might be some progress to show from these efforts. But I promise you, I've been working on this since I moved to Center Hall. I remember a conversation over lunch with Professor Tim Lake the summer before I started as dean. And I don't exactly remember what we were talking about, but I know I mentioned something I'm not very good at. And I remember Tim said, well, Scott, you can grow as dean. And that's an important realization. Though Tim didn't say it in exactly these words, he was suggesting I'm not too old to adopt a growth mindset. All right? For those of you not familiar with this concept, a growth mindset is the belief that your abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. A fixed mindset, on the other hand, is the idea that basic qualities like intelligence or talent or understanding organic chemistry or the ability to express appreciation of others are simply fixed traits that you can do nothing about. A fixed mindset is associated with a belief that talent alone creates success independent of effort. A growth mindset is associated with persistence. I think that Wabash Always Fights calls on us to adopt a growth mindset. So I'm trying to grow. And one last thing, I think a fixed mindset is a dangerous trap to fall into. It lets us convince ourselves that our potential is fixed, that we don't have a role in making ourselves better as students or as teachers, as spouses or as friends. So my project to be a better person and a better dean is to give thanks to those around me. And I make a distinction here between being thankful and giving thanks. Every day I feel thankful for the people around me, thankful for the opportunities I've been given, thankful for meaning and challenging work at this college. Those of you who spent much time with me know I'm generally a very positive person, and I think my optimistic outlook arises from my knowledge that I've been extremely fortunate in life, and my default assumption is this will continue. But as much as I appreciate the good things around me, and especially the good people around me, I struggle to give thanks, to express what I feel to those around me. But I want to have a growth mindset. I want to work hard to do better. So I pushed outside of my comfort zone, agreed to do this chapel talk as part of my work to give thanks, while also holding up some of the very special things about our college community. I hope that some of you might think about when and how you show appreciation for others. I worry that as more and more of our interactions with others take place electronically, it becomes easier to fail to acknowledge the efforts of others. I'll give you a quick example from the past few days. On Monday, I wrote to the faculty email list to ask for volunteers to meet with parents of prospective students visiting for Scarlet Honors Weekend. Over the next couple days, I'd receive emails from colleagues saying that they would be glad to help. It is so easy to just read that email, delete it, and move on to the next, especially when you have 100 emails in your folder to read, which is about what I usually have. But I made a point this week to reply to each of those people with a quick thank you. And I know I haven't always done that, and I want to get better at it. These are small things, but it's often the small things we notice, the things that remind us of what it means to be a member of a community where people care and appreciate each other. I know that I notice. I especially admire people who take the time to send handwritten thank you notes. And when I receive one, I keep them on my desk. I looked before I walked over. I know I have one from Ann Taylor sitting there. There's one from Amy Weir. I have one from Dave Vavrinac. I have others too. I can't even remember what they're about, but I keep them all. And I brought one of my favorites today. I'm going to read it to you. This was a bright spot for me last year in a very dark time following the death of Luke Borenstein. The day that Luke died, Dean Raiders called me to share the news, and then I called a few of the faculty who were closest to Luke so they could hear it from me and have a chance to talk rather than learning from the campus email message that would go out later that evening. A week later, this note arrived at my office from Professor Ann Bost, and I'm going to read it to you. Dear Scott, as we reach the 1 week mark after Luke's passing, my mind turns to contemplating blessings. One of those, for me, was that you cared enough to call and tell me the news so I wouldn't find out through email. That duty must have been difficult for you. I very much appreciate your stepping up to the task. That enabled me to call my lab intern and talk with him before he heard the news from a lesser source. I'm quite grateful. Best, Ann. That's how you give thanks. Dr. Bost is the type of person I want to become. So let me begin. Let me begin by saying thank you to Dean Mike Raiders, the person who so often has the most difficult jobs on our campus, dealing with student tragedies, big and small, helping students in crisis, finding ways that mistakes can be turned into learning opportunities. I'm thankful he's my colleague and that every day I get to see him live out the definition of student-centered. Let me tell you some other things I'm thankful for. I want to thank the group of students, staff, and faculty who've come together as the Mental Health Concerns Committee. They're bringing attention to an issue that touches us all. Their work to normalize the discussion of and attention to mental health is one of the best things that's happened in this community in the past year. Related to this, I want to publicly thank the members of our community who've stood at this podium to share their own personal experiences addressing their own mental health. I want to thank them for their courage. I want to thank the Sphinx Club for creating a space for this conversation, and I want to thank this community for listening to and acting on their message. I want to thank Senior Associate Dean Todd McDormand for 4 years of doing the important work at this college that all too often goes unnoticed. He devotes countless hours to our students, our faculty, especially to the staff in the Academic Affairs Division. And you should all be thankful for Todd, because when I asked him for advice about giving this chapel talk, his reply was that you can never go wrong with brevity. At both the CIC and the GLCA Dean's meetings, I had colleagues from other schools comment to me on how beautiful our campus is. And often when I introduce myself to someone who's visited Wabash, their first comment is, I love your campus. I love the look of your campus. And I think many of us are guilty, as I am, of not thanking our Sodexo colleagues for the attention that they give to our campus. And I'd like to especially thank Dave Morgan, John Maxwell, and their colleagues for their work during the power outage earlier this semester. I know you probably saw that they've repeatedly worked throughout the day. What not everyone got to see is they were working throughout the night. I have multiple emails sent at 1, 2 a.m. from our campus services staff so that we would have food available in Sparks and so that the work of teaching and learning could continue in our classrooms. I can't mention the power outage without thanking our exceptional registrars team. Consider what they did. We lost 2 of our 6 academic buildings and never missed a class. They rescheduled 11 different time blocks over 2 days, and they did it without having access to their offices. I also want to thank all at the college for the way we came together during those 2 days. It gave us an opportunity to see the best of our community, to demonstrate resilience, and I think it set the tone for what's been a very successful semester. Now, one of the things I'm most amazed by when I talk to deans at other liberal arts colleges is how many associate deans they have. I went to the web yesterday because and just did a really random sample, but another GLCA college I looked at, just a little bigger than ours, has 7 people with the title assistant or associate dean in academic affairs in my area. This is not dean of students, this is just in academic affairs. If you're not counting, we have 2. How does our program operate with so little administration? It works because we have exceptionally strong faculty leadership that gets the work of the college done in departments and in divisions and in committees. Every time I talk to another dean, I'm grateful for the faculty and staff we have at Wabash who are dedicated to the mission, collegial with others, and who go the extra mile for the success of our students. Let me give you one small example of a faculty member stepping up for the college. This weekend, we'll welcome over 200 prospective students to our campus for the Scarlet Honors Weekend. A signature element of the program will be class sessions for our prospective students where they'll be able to discuss a reading they received in advance as part of the scholarship competition, a kind of introduction to what tutorial or EQ might be like. 15 faculty have volunteered to lead these sessions, choose the reading, and score the students. I'm extremely grateful for their work to recruit the next class of Wabash students. I'm especially grateful that I and no one from my office had to organize this. Professor Lon Porter organized his colleagues, and I'm sure he's done it in a more thoughtful way than I ever could have. This is leadership. This is commitment to an institution. This is just one of the reasons I'm thankful to have a lot of colleagues like Lon Porter. On the topic of Scarlet Honors, I want to thank the students here for embracing an active role in recruiting the new class. And I know that many of you will make real sacrifices, big and small, things like giving up your bed so that we can host 200 young men for an overnight visit. It's a strong statement about your dedication to the college, one that I know will be appreciated by our guest. And there's one more group I need to thank when talking about Scarlet Honors. Our territory managers and coaches have been searching the world for potential Wabash men, literally. James Quill has logged 100,000 miles this calendar year, enough to circle the globe 4 times. All of our counselors and coaches are out doing this work. They're supported by operations and financial aid staff, and incredibly well led by Heidi Carl and Chip Timmons. I don't know there's a tougher job in all of higher education than convincing young men to come visit a single-sex liberal arts college in rural Indiana. But I want to thank the entire enrollment team for the work that they do. I'm making pretty good progress on my list. I've found ways to thank faculty, staff, coaches, and students for. As dean, I've gained an appreciation for an important part of our community. They're only here on campus with us periodically. Our trustees are incredibly generous with their talent, and we are lucky to have them. A frequent topic at dean's conferences, by the way, is troublesome trustees. I am thankful that I never have a story to share in these conversations. I appreciate that our trustees take the time to know and respect our faculty, and that my faculty colleagues reciprocate. One of my favorite experiences as division chair and dean is when a newer trustee, usually in about their third or fourth year, will take me aside and say, "You know, Scott, the faculty really are even better than when I was a student." For the students here, I hope that some of you will return to serve the college as advisory board members, members of the NAWM or the Board of Trustees. And I would ask that when you do that, you remember your job is not to maintain the college as you experienced it, but to make it a better college for the next generation of Wabash students. Now, I know he is not going to like me saying this, but I will leave the podium with regrets if I don't publicly thank Chairman of the Board Emeritus, Steve Bowen. Some of you students have had the opportunity to know him as your professor. I've worked with him for the past 9 years on the Academic Affairs Committee, where I know him as a strong and effective advocate for faculty, for student success, and for academic rigor. I don't even try to explain anymore to the deans at other colleges that the chairman of our board is in residence with us during the fall semesters. They would just think I'm crazy. The opposite is true. I'm immensely grateful to Steve and all his contributions to our college. Now, I'm going to run out of time before I run out of thanks to give. I apologize in advance for many names that I'm going to skip. But this talk is the beginning, not the end, of being better at expressing thanks. I do, however, need to say thanks to Chris Duff. To say that she manages the dean of the college's office does not scratch the surface of what she does. I actually don't know what to thank her for the most. Managing my chaos, guarding my door, patiently explaining to people why I'm late for another meeting. But thank you, Chris. This is my 20th year at Wabash, and many of you are not just colleagues, but friends. And those of you who know me well, you probably know the person I most need to say thanks to is my wife, Wendy. She's sacrificed a lot to support me, and just like all the other people I've mentioned today, I have not expressed my gratitude to her nearly enough. Now, I struggled with how to end this talk. I want to thank you for listening to my ramblings, for being present as I say out loud gratitudes that I have felt inside for many years. As we go into the end of the semester, a time when the challenges are many and the stress increases, it may be a good time to reflect on the things that you're thankful for. It may be a good time to reach out to your friends, your teachers, your families. It may be a good time to remember the last part of our mission statement, our commitment to live humanely. Go out, give thanks. You don't have to wait until you're a grandparent. You don't have to wait until you have a job where your success is completely dependent on the good work of others. You don't have to wait until you've loved someone for 30 years. Thank you, Wabash.